Joining us now, Chairman of Priorities USA, Guy Cecil, joins us. And a new poll out of New Hampshire has Senators Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren neck and neck in the 2020 primary race. The latest University of New Hampshire CNN poll has Sanders and Warren statistically tied within the poll's over 4-point margin of error. 21% of voters support Sanders' run, up 2 points since July. 18% back Warren, down a point. Former Vice President Joe Biden is also statistically tied with Warren at 15%, but he's down 9 points since the summer. Mayor Pete Buttigieg sits at 10%. Only 23% of New Hampshire's likely Democratic primary voters said they are definitely decided on their pick. 21% are leaning toward a candidate, and 57% are still trying to decide.
So let's put the poll back up, Guy, and let's take a look at these numbers. Obviously, the screaming headline is Joe Biden down 9 percentage points, Gabbard up 4, Klobuchar up 5, Yang up 4. But Joe Biden now finds himself in a position where, yes, he could. Who knows? He could sweep through everything. He could sweep through Iowa. He could sweep through New Hampshire. Who knows? But there's also the possibility with Mayor Pete starting to gain momentum in Iowa, Biden could finish in 4th place, or he could finish in first place or 4th place behind Mayor Pete, Elizabeth Warren, and Bernie Sanders. And it doesn't get any easier for him in New Hampshire. I mean, this race is wide open.
Look, I think the most important number for Joe Biden in that poll is the 57% of people that say they are undecided or are still looking for their candidate, that's his path to regain some of the vote that he's lost. I think it's also important to note, particularly in New Hampshire, one, you've got 2 neighboring senators in Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. Bernie did particularly well against Hillary Clinton in the Democratic primary in the last election. And New Hampshire also has a reputation for a lot of late movement. I mean, let's remember that Howard Dean was leading in New Hampshire at one point. Bill Bradley was leading against Al Gore in New Hampshire at one point. We saw the race change a lot over the last week between Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama in 2008. So I suspect, and I've been saying this for a while, we're going to see more change in the polling in December and January than we're going to see the entire year this year. I think there's still a lot of movement left in these states.
Well, but let me ask you, Guy, can you name a historical parallel where a front runner who is way out in front lost support in the Democratic primary and fell the way Biden has, and then was the one that made that late charge? Because I can't.
Yeah, it's really difficult. It's also hard to name somebody that came in 3rd or 4th place and then was able to recover in Nevada and New Hampshire. Although I will say again, you saw historically someone like John Kerry, even Al Gore against Bill Bradley. The race tightened up. You saw people exploring their options and then eventually came back and ended up supporting Kerry and Gore in those cases. But there's no question that in both of these states, Biden has room to make up. And a lot of this is also the fact that, Warren and for that matter, Buttigieg and Sanders have all been organizing on the ground in both of these states for quite some time. And I think a lot of these other organizations are not at the same standard as these 3 candidates.
Hey, Guy, it's Willie. I think your point about the undecided number is a good reminder to all of us that most of the country is not yet tuned in, and there will be a lot of movement as we get closer here. But if you game it out here, as Joe suggests, and you look at Iowa, let's say Elizabeth Warren wins Iowa and move over to New Hampshire 8 days later, Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders wins New Hampshire. Joe Biden has sort of set up South Carolina as his firewall. He has a huge lead there as of right now. He's got a huge lead there among African-American voters. As an advisor, as somebody who's worked on campaigns and strategized, does the idea of a firewall concern you? In other words, the idea of sitting in one state and waiting for the race to play out and get to you hasn't always worked out well for candidates.
Yeah, look, the risk is pretty simple. If your supporters see that you have lost the first 3 contests, but don't forget we also have the Nevada caucuses in between. if your supporters see that you've lost the first three and come in third or fourth place, are they going to stick with you in the long run, or are they going to look for other options? And I think that's always the challenge when you're relying on states that are later in the process. Is it's very difficult to game out how and why supporters stick with you. Although, look, I think through the course of the last several months, we've seen that as the polls have fluctuated up and down, that African Americans in South Carolina and other states have stuck with the vice president. And the question is, will they, if these numbers continue to be the same in the first three states? I think it's a big open question for their campaign.
Guy, I think the problem with the Biden campaign in Iowa is similar to his problem in New Hampshire, and a lot of it has to do with the lack of money and the lack of energy within the campaign. And could you talk about the role of money as a functioning element of keeping these campaigns going this early in the process?
Yeah, I think there's the misunderstanding about Iowa that because it's a caucus, because so much is focused on organizing and grassroots building, that somehow it's a cheap date. The fact of the matter is these campaigns are spending millions of dollars. Bernie Sanders is up on television. There are other campaigns. Amy Klobuchar is up on television. They're spending money on grassroots organizers, on field staffers, on offices. It is an expensive proposition to organize on the ground in Iowa. And so the challenge for any campaign when it comes to money is how do we balance how much to spend in a place like Iowa or New Hampshire or a caucus state like Nevada, where so much is on organizing. And then don't forget that right after these first four states, we've got California and Texas, which are huge costs if you're really trying to advertise in any of these places, and very difficult to organize because of their size. And so the money pressures are not just about television. The money pressures are really about grassroots organizing and how you're continuing to bring new people in your campaign at the $5, $10, $20 level. If you're having a hard time finding a $10 contributor, you're probably having a hard time finding somebody to knock on a door for you.
As you mentioned, Pete Buttigieg, another guy with tons of money, and he is tied, don't forget, in the Real Clear average with Joe Biden in the state of Iowa. Guy Cecil, thanks so much for your insights as always. Good to see you.
You too.
Coming up on Morning Joe, the parade of testimony in the impeachment probe continues today with a top State Department official expected to tell Congress she told President Trump directed Mick Mulvaney to withhold that military aid to Ukraine. She was told that. That's ahead on Morning Joe.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.